My name's Chris Caius. I'm chairman of the Riverboat Committee. This is Tuesday, July 27th, 2021 at 11:36. And I'm calling the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Caius,
Caius present.
Berman,
Here.
Ford,
Present.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Strathman.
Strathman here.
Great, thank you for being here. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Motion Berman.
Berman moves.
Strathman second.
Strathman second. Any changes from the minutes, modifications? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Strathman.
Yes.
Okay. All right, is Mr. Berger on?
Ron, here's your lunch.
Would you like to, do you have anything you can contribute, Mr. Dahl?
I don't have anything at the moment. I'm expecting Scott soon.
Okay. Well, just as a preliminary here, can you pull up that table for me, the Y table? That would be it there. This is as a quick view of this, I did a little color modifications. The yellow is the items that we had discussed and tentatively approved at our last meeting, first and last meeting. And the rest is in between the top yellow and the bottom yellow is items that we will need to discuss. I have some suggestions that I put in pink or orange myself so that I wouldn't forget. And I talked to Mr. Berger over the weekend and including yesterday about the tables that I had initially started with to give us an idea where we were on the average percentage that the individual applicants applied for year in from 17 to 21 or 17 to 20 and or 21. And there were some changes because I had used numbers that were the numbers that were given out from the current funds. And I also ran numbers that involved both the amount that was given plus the amount that was taken from reserves that each of the individual applicants had. And they were approximately the same. I mean, there were some changes, but the idea was, and I think that was my intention to begin with, was to have us get an idea of year in and year out how the percentages changed and how what percentage we were giving of our funds to those individual applicants so that we get an idea, at least for me, to how it fit in the overall picture of the Riverboat distributions. If there's any comments from the last meeting that anybody's been thinking about before I put in my suggestions, and then we forge ahead on this. Hopefully it'll be pretty quick. My suggestions, if you look at the table, are in the State's Attorney 223 is that we allow the State's Attorney to use $150,000 of their initial or their carryover and then provide them with the remainder of their $334,810 from new funds, which would actually, in that domestic violence, would provide 100% of the amount that they ask for. this, and actually both of those, and the next one down, 2230, my suggestion was that we allow them to spend the $50,000 of their $64,000 carryover unobligated fund balance, and then provide them the remainder up to the average that we had come as a group to, the 596,000, which would provide them 60% of the ask, because it was double what the ask was double what it was last year. And then my suggestion is that we also provide 100% to the Kane Cares and 100% of the web tech services. Now, in those suggestions, and I didn't have any strong thoughts about the first three, 220, 221, and 222. But if you go to column P, element OP, at the bottom down there, that would mean that our total budget in green at the very bottom would be $2.5 million approximately. And then just below that, that would mean that if we gave this amount that I had suggested there, we would be providing the above amounts to the individual applicants, and that would then mean that we're taking 25% of our reserves and using that to make that balance. So that would take, of the $3.3 million, we would be providing $813,000 out of reserves to get the aforementioned, the other columns. So you want to do that as a committee, just go down the items, or shall we just pick one like the domestic violence? 223, how does that sound? Should we talk that over? And see if we can agree with that. Does that, or first of all, does that make sense?
Well, I think the significant thing is the next to last percentage of asking.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving 100% in a great number of cases, and where you're saying less than 100%, I guess maybe
For others.
thinking as to why less. I can agree with 100%, but why something, why consider something less?
I think part
Mr.
of it.
Chairman.
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention that on 223, the domestic violence, I agree with your recommended suggestion that they use 150,000 of cash on hand and we contribute 184,000. Although Mr. Berman had a good point too. If we give 100% to some of the committees, why do we give less to others? I mean, I think our prioritizing here might be a little bit questioned. And my other thought is, since our revenues are down 54%, I think that should have a factor in the percentage that we give. However, I do like the idea of using 25% of the reserves and not more than that. That way we'll have a long-term ability to continue this committee going forward and helping out needed causes.
If we were to give everybody everything they ask, we would use about 46, I did it in another table, I didn't pull it up, about 46% of our reserves. So that somewhere between the 25% and the 50%, if we were, is I think where we're shooting as a committee. Mr. Ford?
Yeah, I liked what percentage of the reserve that we're using. Actually, I agree with pretty much your whole chart. I do understand the concern about some people getting 100%, which is due to the fact that they didn't have any unobligated funds available. So I get that part. So that part, when it get debated, I guess we can. But as far as I'm concerned, actually, I like what we have.
And actually, I could mention a little bit about that. The we are giving 100% to the domestic violence. But in the case of the Child Advocacy Center, we're talking 64%, but then that's 64% of double what they asked last year. And we got half of what we had last year to kick out. So they're actually getting more, even though it shows 100%. The difference is that there was a bigger ask between those two.
So, what is the average percentage that we're giving the state's attorney's office then?
Each one of those is, you mean like of their 5 different or 4 different categories? 5 different categories?
different
Each one is completely different. So I don't know that, I didn't do an average, so I don't know. I'm not shooting for an average.
I would say in the public eye, they won't divide it up like that.
I'm sorry?
In the eye of the public, they won't see it as individual. I think some of our board members won't see it as individual either.
You see it all together?
Yes.
Well, that's possible. And traditionally, they weren't given each the same percentage, I don't believe, in the, some were given more percentages than others, just because of the nature of the ask. I can see the logic of not the 100% on the, as much as I like the Child Advocacy Center, and of course I'd like to support everything, but that was a big ask compared to what we've given in the past. As far as Kane Cares, that is a much smaller ask, of course, and it is going to the health department, and it does qualify under like 3 different factors there: the education, the economy, and that every dollar put in is worth 5. Studies have shown that it's worth 5, and that it's also a definite need. And then as far as web tech services, that's to support our web design, and it is actually, it's one of the very few, I think, that doesn't go into any salary, or it's one of the ones that doesn't have any salaries involved in it. This is just for contracting and licensing. So it doesn't go into salaries. We could, if we wanted to drop it back to the, they ask that, or what our average was for web tech would drop it down to about $260,000. And that would put us at about 23% of our reserves then on that particular one.
Mr. Chairman, Leonard with the question.
Certainly, Mr. Leonard.
Yes, with respect to Kane Cares and the health department, I think that we have adequate funding to help them in other areas. We did it with our first funding we got from the federal government. And now with the ARP plan, we have $103 million there. Giving them 100% of their ask in this, I think might be a little bit high. And I would have no problem with maybe giving them half of that and bringing down the amount that we're taking out of reserves. And then with web tech, I have no problem with that. So I guess my only real concern at this point is Kane Cares, because they have virtually multiple sources of.
I'm having a good day, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. I'm sorry, you kind of
Okay.
fizzed out there at the end, but I think I got to the end. You had no problem with everything except Kane Cares?
That is correct.
Can I ask, I think Kathy Foster is on, or one of the
Hi.
representatives can explain the ask and why that wouldn't fit under some of the other revenue sources?
Send me a postcard, please.
So this is Kathy Foster, the interim executive director, and I believe I also have Canal on, Canal Snowden for finance. And then I also have Laura Barrett, our director of disease prevention, who can talk about the program. I do believe that last year we did have a cut of 24.4% that we had from this. And so I was going to have Laura speak to, what that means from what happened last year when that happened. And then what we're going to be doing going forward so we don't rely on Riverboat funds.
Okay, that'd be great.
So Laura, I'll let you talk. And then Canal, if there's anything you'd like to add, please do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. This is Laura Barrett, and thank you to the committee for allowing me to have this time of your day here to talk about Cane Cares, which is, as you've already discussed many times, is a very worthwhile program that meets some needs of very vulnerable population that we serve. And our ask this year is actually down 42,000 from last year's ask. We had a significant cut last year with it. And that resulted in us not being able to hire a nurse in last year. The lack of that nurse then has a trickle-down effect from the funding with this that then resulted in over 20 families not receiving services in Kane County. And again, the program, it's for first-time moms that are low income, dealing with substance abuse, domestic violence. This team goes out and works one-on-one with these mothers during their pregnancy and all the way through the second year of that child until that child turns 2, and then has handoffs to other programs within our county here to make sure that that child is ready for kindergarten when they get to school age, to be ready for kindergarten as best as they can be. So anytime we have a decrease in this just means we are serving less families with this that could use our help at the most, definitely a trying time right now in our county here. I do want to reiterate what Kathy said. We've heard your message loud and clear. We've been here at your meetings for the last couple of months here and been following this closely. I'm working desperately to find other funding for this next year so that we can either look for alternative options that we can to continue to support this program. I'll let Canal talk directly to the COVID funds, but that ARP is more specifically for COVID, and this would not necessarily be from this here program that would get funding from that, is my understanding, but I'll let Canal talk directly to that. But we will continue to work with options in covering that funding after this year. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have someone else that's going to speak to that?
Hi, this is Canal Snowden, and related to the ARP funds, at this point, we're relying upon utilization of those funds, what we're getting back from the ARP committee in terms of what the intent is for the utilization of those funds. So although we are looking from various sources and we continue to look on a regular basis, with all our programs. And as you know, we have a multitude of grants, which represents about 47-48% of our budget, which has continued to grow over the years because we are very active lookers in terms of resources for the health department other than the county public funds.
Okay, thank you. So,
Chairman,
yeah, Ms. Strathman.
I think this is a program that is worthy of 100% of their ask, especially with the return. Every dollar invested, we get $5 return. And I think this is a really critical program, especially now with families being so strapped with everything. I think this is a program I would like to see us support 100% of their ask in the way that you did it on this chart.
Okay. Can we get a consensus maybe on, Bill is saying maybe not. I'm saying yes. Berman is saying yes, no,
Yes.
and Mr. Ford.
Yeah, I don't have any problem.
Okay. So it would be the way I take that, then we would, at least on that particular item, we would do that, consider that a finished, if I can find it on my chart. Oh. So I can't color that, but we'll take that into account. Then on, should we just go down to web tech? Is a consensus to do 100% on theirs, or there's a,
Question though?
sure.
Ron, can you use your microphone, please?
Yeah, Ford, question. So the asking of 100% is based on what amount that are actually asking for the fiscal year 2022. But some of them, if I'm looking at it right,
Yeah, I think I
include-
made the table not quite right there.
Yeah, we're not giving them 100%.
I think we are. They ask for,
I mean,
223 is 100%.
I guess my out of the Riverboat funds, we're not giving them 100%.
Well,
On this one, we are.
on this one, yeah.
On this one, but some of the other ones.
Oh, some
I'm
of the
not-
others,
Yeah.
well, yeah. I guess it's partly how you look at it too. I mean,
That's what I'm
they
getting
do
at.
have reserves, but those were also Riverboat money given to them at one time. So
Okay.
is it because they have it left over? Is it really money's money? I guess on that. And they're using it?
So their reserves, obligated reserves come from Riverboat funds also?
Yeah, all the unobligated reserves were from past years. And some of them at one point, like 4 or 5 years ago, before they really started checking into it, about the time Mr. Berger took over, I think, they had a considerable amount they weren't even aware of, and that was part of the thing. They'd just been given it every year and maybe not used it all up, and because of changes in staff and things, it was waiting there to be used, but wasn't used.
Yeah.
So I'm actually and I'm leaning toward not having the extra riverboat funds in someone else's riverboat fund unobligated. That's my position, is that if we can use those up, then.
And I'm agree with you on that. I think much of
So
those.
the 150 and the 50 would help support the domestic violence up to 100% and the child advocacy up to 64%, but they also ask, almost double, so from last year, the child advocacy, as much as I'd like to give everybody the money, but
Yeah, me too.
does that sound reasonable there? I think that IT, of course, is going to have some amount of money. If you think that it should be cut out, there may be some money that they would get from ARP as well. But
So from here, does this go straight to the full board?
I think it goes to finance.
Or the finance?
Is it on top of the agenda? I can't pull up the agenda. Where it goes, I believe it goes to finance.
Okay.
But I would like to have as strong a consensus coming from the committee as possible, so that there really aren't any questions about how we arrived at this. Because if it could be more people, not that everybody shouldn't have a voice in it. I think we should come to a logical conclusion that we think most people could agree with, so that we don't have
I'm at the point now which I would like to see more eyes take a look at it. So I would like to see this chart move on to the next level.
okay. Well, hopefully we come to something that we can live with, that we don't have to change in the future. So if you have a serious concern about something,
no, I
we
don't.
should do it now, because
I don't.
I appreciate more eyes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
But we should have something, and that's part of the reason I wanted to dig into it as much as I did, was that so that I would understand it. So if someone came to me and they said, well, what is this 100% of this? Well, or 50% of this, or why aren't we doing this? Then I want to make sure that our committee is able to stand behind it. And on the big things, I think we are at using 25% of the reserves.
Yes,
I think that sounds like a logical thing.
yes.
I think
Yes,
everybody
I
can get
agree.
behind that. So then is the distribution. I think the logical on, it makes sense to, for the 64% and the 100% of the, of 223 and 230. And then we have a consensus, a majority that would say that Kane Cares is 100% of the ask, which was $40,000 less than last year. So they just a lot like the water distribution or water drainage, shared drainage. They've done some of the work for us, and that they know that we're going to have less to deal with and distribute. So they've done that. So I think it makes sense to do that kind of thing. So,
Mr. Chairman, Leonard,
yes,
with one question.
Mr. Leonard, yes, absolutely.
Yes, I just wanted to ask on the information technologies, what our justification was in giving them 100% of their ask. They don't have any unobligated funds or cash on hand. I understand that, but I just don't understand why we're giving 100% to them. And I'd like to know what the logic was behind that.
That was my suggestion. I like IT. They're using it for the web education and the website, as well as some other applications on the web. And that was just my suggestion. I really don't have any strong ask for that. And like I said, if we cut it back to their, I think was the average was 260. I have to look at my table. I don't know why I have. Yeah, actually the average should be 254,799.85 for the average that they would receive if you take your 5-year average of what they were receiving, they would receive about $250,000. And I'd have we could put it at 260 or 250. And that, like I said, I ran the numbers on it too, and it brings it down to about 23% of the reserves then were being.
Mr. Chairman, Leonard, with another statement, please.
I got a little comment here. Web services is used for all county it's used for all, the web is used for all county departments. So it's not a matter of that just going to IT, or it's not used for salaries, and it's used for all county departments. So it's something that's countywide. Each of them on each individual basis as it comes up and as needed, I believe is the way I recall the conversation now. So I apologize for not getting that right. So that lends for me, that lends a little more strength to providing 100%. It might be used for the health department. It might be used for it's all web services. And it's for licensing. And I think actually even, as I think Roger said, it was even something as simple that has to be paid for is like the photographs. You have to use licensed photographs if you're doing the web design. Otherwise, we get sued for not having that. So that would be Kane County Connects, as well as any one of the departments that is using web services.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan.
Yes, Miss Allen.
Thanks. I'm not a member of your committee, and I apologize for barging in.
Not a problem.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that there's always going to be an ongoing conversation about when the judiciary comes to us and says, we are serving the county, we are serving your neighbors, what we ask for, you need to give us. And there are people who will say, absolutely, we need to do that. Now, to do that, we may need to raise taxes. We may need to say, in order to provide services, we can't just keep our taxes capped all the time. We may need to provide more services. I mention that in this context because we have not raised taxes. Some of these programs come to us to say, well, then we need to fund them with a riverboat. But the fact is that maybe these services should be funded with taxes rather than the riverboat, and the riverboat used for just the ones that can't have taxes. And I'm going to say that the farmland preservation falls into that category. I can't imagine us going out to referendum and saying we need to raise taxes or we need to have a special fund because we want to protect farmland. We have this riverboat fund and that's what we use it for. And it's 100% match from the feds. I realize that everybody here is trying to be fair, but please put into your ether that if you want to fund all of the programs that the judiciary comes to us for, then we may need to do it in other ways. I'm not sure that these precious riverboat funds can, like 50% is going into the judiciary. And every program is needed, absolutely, but I would say that some of those programs from the judiciary should be funded with taxes, and the farmland protection program never will, and we get 100% match, and that's why Riverboat should be willing to fund the farmland protection program to the amount that they need. And this year is special because they're getting more funds from a different source, and that's why they're asking for that's why the ask is larger, but we get the money matched. And that doesn't happen anywhere else. Thanks for letting me talk at you.
Certainly. Good. You've been on it, so you know you have a unique perspective.
That's a kind way to put it. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Allen. Always try to be kind. Okay.
My comment, I sometimes think that projected unobligated fund balance as of 11/30/21 is sort of a misnomer. That some of those funds are already proposed to be spent. And yet, why do we have a carryover over balance? If they requested it, I think it should be spent. And if it wasn't spent that year, it should be spent in future years, so.
And my understanding is that's exactly right. If we don't put it into their spending budget, which is by putting it into the, and maybe I could be corrected on this, but if we don't put it in them and make it available for them to spend, then they'll have to come back to the board and ask for it at some other time. Because that, theoretically, it's not budgeted then. It's just out there.
Well, it's been allocated to them before. It's
For last year.
from last year or
If they
something.
didn't spend it last year, then we have to tell them that they can spend it this year.
But yet, as we learn, there's some of those funds in that are already proposed to be spent by the end of the year. Or at some point in time, I think we're notified that of one of the funds, I don't remember which one.
Well, water resources, maybe. Was it judicial? Water resources is a unique kind of thing, and we may have to discuss that again too. But my recollection from judicial was that none of the, if it was unobligated, it was just not, it was unobligated. It wasn't.
So why aren't we taking all of the unobligated funds and distributing them again?
That's something certainly we can do.
But it's,
They were suggesting that they keep the unobligated funds in there so that they don't overrun things. And since they had, my logic was they'd overrun 221 to minus 4,000, that if we allowed them 10,000, then they would be covered at least on those funds that had,
Well,
that's why I picked 10,000,
that
but that's,
unallocated fund balance is not part of our balance that we have.
No.
Okay.
no, it comes, it won't be added into, it's added into that on a separate thing. The 25% is the funds that we have. Each department may have some unobligated
It
funds.
seems to me it's strange that they ask for funds one year, the money is given to them,
Mm-hmm,
it's not expended, and then they come back and ask for funds again the next year.
mm-hmm.
Well, it seems to me that we should take all of those funds that are unobligated and use them this year.
Well, certainly as a committee, we can do that. My suggestion was just allowing them
but
some
What,
leeway, but that,
it's a fund balance that's out there in limbo,
yep.
and I would just soon, I don't know.
Well, in the case of the 221, my understanding is they're going back to the board to ask for a loan or line of credit to cover that until the end of the year, and then it'll be repaid with other funds. Because if they don't have it, they have to somehow come up with the money. They can't run a negative, so they have to come back to the board. This just allowed them, I don't know, I'm not a financial guy, so maybe it goes against everybody's, if you're a financial guy, so that's it, man. Spend it all or not have it. And they're, each one of them is flexible, so they may have had something going that didn't turn out during the year.
Especially this last year.
Yeah, that could have, and it's the same reason that they maybe are overdrawn on the one is that,
But why
it's just-
leave it there? Why not use it? If they requested money, why not use that money first?
well, we would just lump it into their available funds. Now, my suggestion was we're allowing them to spend it and using it as a portion of their ask. We could give them say you can spend the 160, like for 223, we could say we can spend $160,000 and we're not giving you anything more because we don't have enough money, but is that what you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting that we use up
All of it?
all of that money.
On everybody.
Well, it would be the,
If it's unobligated,
yep.
I think we should obligate it by using it. That's-
The human resources has 59,000. I think the only ones that it really applies to, because tuition reimbursement is going to take 50 of theirs. I guess we could say 59,000, but they've been part of each one of these funds is different. The tuition that the board has allowed in the past has been $50,000. So they've had a reserve that they've been working on for a while, and they're getting it down to, like next year, they're not going to ask for $50,000 out of reserve, but they may well ask for $50,000 that we would have to come up with, or the difference between $9,000 and $50,000 to make it whole for the education grants that we provide to employees. So each one is just a little bit different, but I get your logic. And as a committee, we certainly can suggest that if you think that's the appropriate thing to do. These were just my suggestions right off the top of my head. Or, well, I did a little study because I found out that just exactly how it would affect the reserves. This would bring the reserves, less use of the reserves down some more if we were to take that extra $29,000 or something. That's the difference between those three accounts anyway, the 59 that's 160 and the 164. Now, water resources is a little different, but. Anybody else, Bill? You're awful quiet. Anybody on that same line, at least that line about using all of the reserves.
Well, you're using, what, 316,000 out of 400 and something?
444.
Microphone, please.
Yeah, I don't have the total on the total reserves, but
316 out of 404. I guess
that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think actually the big difference, I think, is the 99,000. And that we may have to come back to on water resources because they have to have that actually in their budget because they're going to use it as contingency. So if we don't give it to them right now, they'll have to come back and ask for it later. That's my understanding anyway.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the difference, if I did my math right, is what they have in unobligated to what we're using of their cash on hand is about 128,000.
99 of which is in
Water resources.
water resources, which they've actually asked to use as contingency. That's why I said we may have to loop around back and discuss that because
I
If we
think we've done an adequate job of distributing that
okay,
unobligated. So it just seems to me that it's a misnomer being unobligated.
I
What it
agree.
really means is it's something that they still have a chance to spend.
you're right, because it is in the future. We're talking November 1st. Yeah. But as of current,
Mr. Chairman, Leonard with a comment.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes, I think the unobligated fund balance is a little bit of a misnomer. As an example, like with water resources, even though they have roughly 100,000 in there and it hasn't been spent yet, it is allocated and expected to be spent, within the next 6 to 12 months. So
Right.
I think what we've done with the unobligated funds is fine. We should leave that the way it is. And quite honestly, I think the other recommendations are very good also.
Yeah.
I like the idea of using 25% of the reserve. My opinion would be at this point that we as a committee consider approving this and moving it forward to finance and then executive and the county board in case anybody else has any concerns.
Okay, is that a motion?
I'll second it if it is.
Yes, it is. I
Mr.
move
Leonard
that.
moves, Mr. Berman seconds, that we move this proposed as it is here on this sheet. I don't know, to finance. I think it goes, Chris, are you still on? So, does it go to finance?
I believe so.
Okay,
Actually,
that's fine. We're going to pass
this
it on
is-
anyway,
Wait,
wherever it
Scott-
goes.
Scott
this is
knows
Scott
this.
Berger. Actually, we usually take the resolution directly to executive and then
Okay,
the
that's
full
to
board.
executive then.
That makes sense.
All right. Then we have a motion and a second to pass this as it's listed. Can you, and you can see those figures, Scott? I sent you that, didn't I? So then we'll as on the screen here, and it's sent in, we'll adopt this budget for the Grand Victoria Riverboat funds for 2022. Can I have roll call, please?
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Strathman.
Yes.
Motion passes. So
Motion for adjournment.
motion to adjourn from
Ford
Mr. Berman.
seconds.
Ford seconds. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All in
very much.
favor? Or,
Aye.
well, how does,
Aye.
okay.